Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us as we present the South Carolina Business Loan Fund. Glad to have you with us today. I believe we have about 40 or 50 attendees also broadcasting this over Facebook Live. So thanks to those folks who will tune in. Always a chance for you to go back and re-watch this on Facebook Live, as the recording will be there after it's over. But again, we're glad that you're here. COVID has thrown so many twists and turns at our local businesses, needing access to capital and if all possible, cheap capital, if possible. So we wanted to bring you this opportunity when it was presented to us that there was a loan fund available that that could service small businesses if you found that you so needed it. I want to make the distinction, though, before we get to our panelists, that this is not a webinar about the South Carolina grant funding that's coming from the CARES Act. Okay, so there's a whole other program that is also funded by the CARES Act, but it's called the South Carolina CARES Act grant. If you want more information about that, I would be glad to get you that information. But again, this is the South Carolina Business Loan Fund, two sources of money coming from the federal government, but all for our local businesses. So again, let's regroup on that if you were tuning in thinking that you were going to hear about the grant. I have the distinct honor of being with a couple of great guys today to talk about the Business Loan Fund. John O'Toole with Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation. John, thank you so much for agreeing to host this with me, and we can really give Randy the hard questions later. How about it?
That'd be great. That'd be good.
Yeah, and John, I know that you, in working with businesses that are not only in operation, but those looking to relocate here, again, cash is king right now. Folks need it, and this is a very viable option for them if they go looking either for from their banks or from this loan program, or the combination of the two.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Hannah, and thanks to the Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce for being a great teammate. This past weekend, I had a shirt on that I had gotten from a blood drive, and the Red Cross slogan is, "We're all in this together." And as I think of the times we're in, and these are very stressful times, and we've made it through, hopefully, the first wave. Hopefully, if there is a second wave, we'll have the wherewithal to get through it. But I remind businesses that this is not a time to be shy or humble. I remind them that in 2008, when there was a downturn in the economy, Republicans and Democrats kind of paid attention to a great extent to larger businesses. And in this wave, there's been a great focus, I think, across both parties to look at CARES Act funds that could help the Main Street businesses. And that's a great part of our economy in Beaufort County. And so we're really lucky. And when you think about we're all in this together, we have our Low Country Council of Governments, and they work with the Catawba Council of Governments. And we won't spend a lot of time going into the framework of councils of government, but basically a lot of federal funds pass down through our council of governments and through a collaboration of council of governments. So today it's my pleasure to introduce Randy Pellisero from the Catawba Council of Governments. And Randy is down this way quite a bit to try to work with our small businesses and access a variety of funds. And presently, he has a source of funds that could make a lot of sense for your business. So again, thanks to the Chamber, and it's my pleasure to introduce Randy.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. And I thank the Chamber and everyone in the area for allowing me a few minutes to talk to the businesses. Hannah's going to help me because I'm technology challenged sometimes with the presentation, but I'd like to let everybody know that I've been a banker in the states of North and South Carolina for about 20 years. I purchased my own business in 2008. That tells you what a banker learns in 20 years of banking. That, of course, was the Great Recession, as we used to call it. And after owning that business for 6 years, I had a desire to help create jobs and retain jobs, as I kept all my employees on the payroll through that. And it taught me that as I neared the end of my career, I wanted to do just that, which is help folks grow the economy, grow jobs, and retain jobs. And I was able to do that by joining a friend who already worked here at Catawba Regional. We're a council of government, as it was mentioned, and we do economic development loan programs. So with that, I'm going to head on to the program. I've been doing this for 8 years, calling in the area 8 years, but I call primarily primarily rather on the bankers, the banks down in the area, and the economic development folks and the chamber. So that's how Hannah and John and I know each other. And our programs are generally in partnership with the bank, but the one we're going to spend most of the time on today, I can be the primary lender. So I want to talk with you about the South Carolina Business Loan Program, where it came from, what it's used for, and how it might be able to help you. If we could just go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. So John had mentioned earlier, we're one of 10 councils of government in the state of South Carolina. Now I cover the entire state with my Small Business Administration loan program, and then I have some county-specific loan programs. But your councils of government have a lending arm, most of them do. So we're one of the 10. However, over doing this for a number of years, there were some councils of government that were going to get out of economic development lending. We didn't want that to happen because then the loan dollars leave the area. So over the last 3 to 5 years, we're actually the managers for 6 of the 10 councils of government loan funds, the ones that are county specific through the Economic Development Administration. So enough of that. If we can go to the next slide, please. I mentioned council of government. This is just a visual. The abbreviation is COG. So we gave you a nice visual of a COG. The lower right-hand corner for me anyway talks about business lending there. We do lots of other things, but we're going to talk about loan programs that can help you and then leave time for questions as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. I mentioned the SBA 504 loan program. This is a program that's been around for over 30 years. Many of the SBA loan programs have been around for that long. The one that I support is called the 504 program. At one point, it was called the Real Estate Lending Program. It's used primarily for funding for commercial real estate and heavy assets with a useful life of 10 years or more. Banks primarily, will do what's called a conventional loan if they can, or real estate loan, which is the bank does it on their own. Sometimes they need to participate with an economic development lender when underwriting guidelines are exceeded or when it just makes sense. And that's where I partner with them. And we've done a number of loans in your area, as I'll share towards the end of the presentation. But the big thing to know now is interest rates are really good. So if you've ever thought about buying a new building or buying your building or expanding, I'll share with you when I started my banking career in 1981 that the prime rate was 17%. That just makes me swallow hard when I think about that, just to pay 17% interest. To give you a comparison, the SBA 504 posted rate right now for a 25-year fixed term is 2.43% for the month of October. I will tell you that layered onto that interest rate is a guarantee fee and a servicing fee. So the actual all-in rate is a little bit under 4%, which is a very competitive rate fixed for 25 years. This program is in participation with a bank. The bank charges their rate, but I've talked with folks all the time about this program and I've done a number of them in the Bluffton, Beaufort, and Hilton Head area. If we can advance to the next slide, please. The revolving loan fund program is the one that comes through the Economic Development Administration. It's also the program that's specific to the South Carolina Business Loan Fund. This is just a smaller SBA 504 type loan where I can go up to $5.5 million with an SBA loan. This program project size is around $1.5 million. And we can participate with the bank in this one. And in some instances, which I'll talk about very soon, we can be the primary lender. The loan size for this one is $50,000 to $500,000 on the primary program. And we've actually expanded the program by acquiring that additional lending area I mentioned, going to 6 of the councils of governments. We're now in 35 counties. The slide says 18. It just shows I need to update my slide that I shared, and I apologize. But we can talk specifics about this offline with any businesses through the chamber. I want to spend more time on this next program on the next slide. The South Carolina Business Loan Fund. As was mentioned earlier, and we had a mention yesterday in a chamber program, these dollars came down through the CARES Act that occurred a few months ago. Sometimes it takes a while to filter down to specific programs. The EDA received quite a few funds, and then they filter down to the folks who work with the EDA, such as myself, those folks who had a revolving loan fund. For the state of South Carolina, the state received about $14 million because we are such a big participant through the 6 councils of government, we have $8.2 million, and it's really a first come, first served type program. It can go in any county that we cover in the state. I'm happy to say I'm processing 5 loans through this program right now for the Bluffton, Hilton Head, Beaufort area. So we've been very active down there. I have one closing tomorrow. But this is through your CARES Act dollars. Next slide, please. We're going to be hopefully advertising this program. We've gone purely off the press release up to this point. We've been so busy with it, we just haven't had to. This was a mock-up of an ad we're going to do through the chambers, we hope, on the web pages. And it shows 19 counties. Again, that is 29 counties. It doesn't cover the agribusiness size of the revolving loan fund, but when that comes out, just know we'll be making progress. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the South Carolina Business Loan Fund. I mentioned $8.2 million available. First come, first serve. Loan amounts $50,000 to $750,000. I will say we're making a $25,000 loan under this program, so there's some flexibility there. The EDA wants us to get these dollars out, helping businesses as fast as we can. In fact, if we don't lend that $8.2 million in 2 years, it can get clawed back. So it's my mission and my co-lender, Ed Brock's mission, to lend all those dollars as fast as we can. And we got a great start. As I mentioned, we have 5 pending loans in the area right now. The interest rates are negotiable. We set the interest rate. Terms are negotiable. We'll go out to 25-year amortization on a real estate loan, heavy equipment loan. It's usually based on the useful life of what we're lending money for. It can be used for things such as fixed assets, which are buildings, heavy equipment, as I mentioned, technology loans, protective equipment loans associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, and working capital. And we'll talk more about that working capital in a few minutes. These funds do have to be to businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19. So not necessarily negatively impacted. The loan closing tomorrow for a business in your area is for a business that's grown so much because of COVID-19. They had to expand their business, buy a new facility because they're an online retailer of goods and services. But most of these monies are going to businesses that have been impacted, what I'll call negatively, by COVID-19. Your sales are down. It's hard to borrow money from a bank. You need help. And we want to be able to get these funds out to you. If we could please advance to the next slide. This is just a snapshot of the application. The reason I wanted to show this during the presentation is there's a little disclaimer there that these funds are to those businesses impacted by COVID-19. They cannot be used for the same purpose that a business may have obtained a loan through the PPP program or the EIDL program. So PPP, folks might be familiar with that. You wanted to keep your employees, you could borrow money and get it forgiven. That's part of the CARES Act. So if you borrowed money to cover employees from March to October, I could not lend you money on the CARES Act money that I have for March to October, but you could still get it for payroll after October within the time window that's given. And that's just detail we could talk about later. Just wanted everybody to know that. If we could go to the next slide, please. I want to share with you now some examples and what I call success stories there in the Hilton Head, Bluffton, and Beaufort area. I handle North Carolina as well. I sometimes call it Beaufort, so I'm going to be in trouble. But this is your local Dairy Queen on the island, Kaylin Kim. She's given me permission to say her name as the owner, and it's great. It used to be an Arby's years ago, and we were able to work with the 504 loan program to get this building. So please go to your local Dairy Queen and purchase some items from them. If we go to the next slide, thank you so much. A local dentist, Dr. Joel Dara, there in Bluffton, Buckwalter Place, a great place to be, and another business loan that was very useful for the doctor. Next slide. Now this is over in Beaufort. It's a bed and breakfast, a couple 100 years old, called the Cuthbert House Inn. A wonderful place to stay if you want to get away. Again, we helped with a 504 loan on this one. The prior loan was a revolving loan fund loan. I should have mentioned that. Next slide, please. This is an electrical contractor. Mike and Aaron, Live Oak. You'll see their trucks running around town. They're very active down there. This was just an office condo. Again, an example of what you could use funding for. Next slide. These are the Cooksies, another office condo. They actually have some tenants. You only have to be the primary tenant, which means own 51% of an existing building or 60% of new construction. So you could have a tenant in your building with you, as they do. They represent a beautician and an interior decorator there. So most businesses will qualify for these type loans. Next slide, please. That's my contact information. I would end telling you that there's a number of other deals I'm not talking about. Nick's Steak and Seafood there on the island, a great restaurant, SBA 504 loan. We got an assisted living facility. I mentioned I have 5 loans pending, but would love to be able to assist businesses. I know we want to have time for questions, so I just wanted to generate some interest with the presentation, and I'm happy to share additional details. I can talk about other economic development loan programs are out there, what our activity has been down there, but I want to turn it back over to Hannah and John at this time and see if we have any questions for folks who want to participate.
Randy, thank you so much. What a great presentation. And boy, I tell you, you really flew through that. That was a lot of information, great information. And I love the success stories too. It's great whenever we can put a face with a name with the program and really see those tangible efforts in our community. A couple of questions, and I want to invite the folks who are listening, watching, that the chat box is open. So if you have questions you want to type in there, we will get to those. We had a question come in from our, whenever folks registered, one of them was, could funds be used to develop affordable housing along with other funding resources?
That's a great question. Our mission is to assist affordable housing in any way we can. However, the loan programs that I have are for owner-occupied real estate. So that doesn't work, generally speaking, for owner-occupied or investment type real estate.
Okay. And John, if you and I, we just want to kind of ping pong back and forth until other chats come in. We may have one. I'll direct traffic as much as I can. Are credit scores continued in the applications?
Yes, we do. We operate very much like a bank. Certainly when we partnership with the banks, and even if I was doing a loan on my own, one of the things we have to get, or I'll just go over some of the information we have to get, Hannah, because that generates a good need for information. Normally, we would ask for 2 years of tax returns. So if you're a business, we would get 2 years of tax returns on a business, 2 years of tax returns on the individual or the owners of the business, a personal financial statement. If it's a new business, a business plan and projections. So we're going off of historical information when we have it, projections when we don't. And yes, one of the pieces of side information that we get is credit scores. I will say we are much more lenient than maybe a commercial bank might be, meaning your credit score would not have to be as high, but you do have to have good credit because that shows how you're going to repay a loan. And these are loans, not grants.
One of the things a lot of the loans, PPP, CARES Act, grants that we're talking about these days have a date you will have had to have been in operation in order, you had to have been in business by February or March or October. Are there any, especially for our new businesses or entrepreneurs that may be watching this, that would maybe want to access these dollars for any kind of new, you mentioned a business plan, or those other dollars that you're talking about, and because a new business would not be affected by COVID. So how could they access these dollars for a startup?
That's right. So when I can create jobs and when I can retain jobs, I'm very interested in seeing if I can help provide a loan either primarily by myself or by partnering with a bank. Now, the South Carolina Business Loan Fund, specific to the CARES Act, there's a window. Your business has to have been operating and your business has to have been impacted. So that one specific fund, it would have a requirement. But in terms of the other programs that I directly support, the SBA 504, I have a USDA program called the Intermediary Relending Program. I could work with new businesses that are just now starting up. The banks have a SBA program called the 7A program. There's assistance we could find to help folks.
Randy, one of the other questions that has come in, can funds be used to acquire another business? And if it's not the particular CARES Act funds, do you have other programs that they might access?
Yeah, the SBA 504 is not part of the CARES Act. The USDA Intermediary Relending Program is not part of the CARES Act, although if you were to go to the websites, they have had some CARES Act appropriations, which I would tell folks to look for on the web, or they could call me and I would assist them. So we would love to try to find ways to help fund businesses that are out there.
Okay. I have a bunch of questions, so and hopefully they'll be helpful to our listeners. But of the $8.2 million, you mentioned you were working with 5 already. What portion of it is subscribed? Because obviously, if people want to get into your pipeline, they probably should do that quickly.
Absolutely, a great question. We have almost committed to $1.5 million of those 8.2 million already. So it is first come, first serve. I would love to have to go back to the EDA and say we're out of money way before our 2 years is up, and I'd like to see what else I can do for businesses. We do that when we run out of funding. We've been lending through the revolving loan fund for 30 years, and we do go back and ask for more funds to lend. The reason it's called the revolving loan fund is because when we get paid back, we lend it again. And so this money will stay in the market, helping businesses in the state of South Carolina and in the Bluffton, Beaufort, and Hilton Head market area. And we want to continue to do that.
Okay, and Anna, yeah, jump right in. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to mention, I saw in the registration, we have a lot of our banking partners that are also on this call, and we just want to open up the dialogue as well with them, because I know that, Randy, you work with a lot of banks to supplement perhaps what a bank could not. So if folks just really love working with their bank, how do you interface with a bank in this particular case?
So again, I've been calling on the banks, many of the commercial lenders. I would love to call on all of them. I come down in the area at least once a month during busy season or as needed. So I've been calling on the banks for 8 years. My first mission is to partner with the bank. The bank makes part of the loan, I make part of the loan. And the reason for doing that is, if you look at it on the bank side, we reduce risk for them because their loan to value is less. They can use their capital to lend to more businesses so we can help more businesses. And then on the customer side, I hope to get the customer the best terms and conditions that they can get out in the marketplace. As I mentioned, that SBA 504 rate is 2.43% right now. I'm not sure a commercial lender would be willing to lend money at that rate because the margin is just not enough to be a profitable business per se. But their rates aren't that much higher than that. What our mission is, as we work as partners, is to provide a great funding source and options to the business. They may get a commercial loan straight, or they may get a loan with an economic development loan participation.
There were a couple questions that came in the chat box. John, get a couple more ready though. Could the money be used for growth by acquiring another business? That was one question that came in, and another, are nonprofits eligible?
Sorry, I think that was asked and I may not have answered it. In terms of acquiring another business, my loans are to fund an asset. We're a collateral-based lender. So if you're buying a business and part of it is a building, we might be able to fund purchasing a building, a piece of heavy equipment. I can't fund what's called by bankers goodwill, or the non-asset based side of it. So if you look at it that way, I think it helps think through it. The best program that I know of to help purchase businesses is like the SBA 7A program, because it can fund some goodwill, and you can use these loans together. Like I could partner a 504 loan with a 7A loan on the SBA side, or I could use the revolving loan fund or even the IRP, intermediary relending program loan, in combination with an SBA loan. So that's where we hope to try to find where we can provide a funding source for a business that they might not be able to get without that support.
And the question for nonprofits, could a nonprofit apply?
Oh, thank you. Yes. Not so much on the SBA 504 side, but under one of the revolving loan fund programs, we have money available to nonprofits. It's usually like a 501c3. There are a whole lot of different nonprofit type entities out there. So we would have to just look at each one, I think.
And Randy, we have a question. Would a renovation to an existing building qualify under this CARES Act loan program?
So renovations, the ones we've primarily been involved with, and I'll just share examples. You got a lot of franchises out there, and every 10 to 15 years, the franchisee wants them to update their furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, what we call FF&E. And you have a base loan for the real estate, and many folks don't want to lend for the FF&E because it doesn't have that much collateral value. That's a perfect fit for the revolving loan fund, and we can, in fact, do that as long as we get our collateral position on what we're financing. It's more difficult to lend straight for what lenders call upfit. If you're just putting up sheetrock and moving a room around, because I am a collateral-based lender and I have to look at how the collateral shakes out, for lack of better words. But we can use alternate collateral. So it can be collateral that's not specific to that particular building in support of the loan with the revolving loan fund, not with the SBA 504. So again, it's my job to have all that up in my head to be able to talk to folks about it. I certainly don't expect everybody to remember the ins and outs of this. We just want you to remember that, hey, there's a guy named Randy Pellisero who works around here who might be able to help us out, along with all your local banks.
Muted. Randy, yeah, I unmuted myself, sorry. Collaterals come up on one project you and I try to work on. We have a question here, and maybe collateral is something people need more information on. The question is, for working capital purpose loans under SCBLF, is collateral still required?
Yes, it is. And that's the challenge we've had with that program when I've evaluated working capital. So that's a great question. It's almost a case-by-case basis. Again, depending on what we're lending money on. If it's inventory or something tangible, I've got some value there. If it's really just covering working capital, like your everyday business expenses of salary and keeping the lights on and that kind of thing, I'm gonna have to look at some other collateral support, but I will lend at less than 100% collateral support. I will take what we call a negative position up to a certain dollar value.
Okay,
which is a little different than the bank.
Okay, and one question I had, if somebody begins this process with you, what is the turnaround?
That's a great question, because the SBA has been around a long time and those loans take a little longer to close. I've worked with them 8 years. I'd be the first one to say that. So if you're doing an SBA loan, at least a 504 loan, I'm going to say you better have 60 to 90 days for the processing of the same, sometimes longer. If you're dealing with the revolving loan fund, which the South Carolina Business Loan Fund falls under, I've closed loans in 3 weeks or less for the revolving loan fund. The South Carolina Business Loan Fund dollars, the 8.2 million, is a little different because I have to request advances under that program to come down through the EDA. So that takes 10 business days to get that money. So that process will probably take a little longer, maybe as much as a month, to do the underwriting, meet with the business, get the loan approved, and then request the funds.
Okay. I probably have a question for you based on one of your clients. If you go to Dairy Queen, would you get a peanut parfait or a blizzard?
I now weigh 20 pounds more than I did 10 years ago because unfortunately I met the blizzard. So okay. I probably had every blizzard that they serve, and my favorite is the Reese's peanut butter cup. I now have many pounds due to that and ride a bike constantly to keep it off.
Okay, good
John,
to know.
What's your favorite blizzard?
I prefer the peanut parfait, but when I get the blizzard, it's the same exact one with the Reese's peanut butter cup blended into it. And yours?
Banana split blizzard. It has every.
I've never had.
It's so good, and I think it has the fewest calories as well, which is why I like to see what I'm
not counting calories when I go through that drive-through.
Well, guys, thank y'all so much. Hey, John, I love having a co-anchor. This is fantastic. And Randy, thank you so much for the information. We thank as well our banking community who has joined this call as well, because I know that they are eager to also help our local business community and create those collaborations as well. If you need to get in touch with Randy, again, his contact information was on the screen. If you did not get it, just shoot me an email. Happy to get that to you. And we will get you this information. I have PDFs of mine's all written over, I'm sorry, of the business loan program flyer that I can send to you as well. If you want more information about the CARES grant program, I'm in the office from 10 to 2 every day, weekdays, to be able to help folks go through that application, and my head's spinning with that grant program as well as this loan program. So
absolutely.
It's great to have resources for our small businesses though, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it, honestly, you can get a ton of information if you're willing to go on your computer and go out to the web, as I call it, accelerate.ss.gov or .sc.gov rather. Will get you info on that grant program. Chamber can provide you information. I mean, there's certain things you need to know. That's targeted strictly to small businesses with 25 or less employees. It can also be for nonprofits. The programs I offer, there's certainly more employees within the businesses than that. So it's nice to see that we are getting some support from government agencies, both in the form of grants, which you don't have to pay back, although they're competitive, and then loans. And I will point out that it's first come, first serve on a finite amount of money on those loan dollars we were talking about for the South Carolina Business Loan Fund. That's at $8.2 million. Your 504 and some of the other SBA loan programs are appropriated by Congress on an annual basis. And by the way, they're zero subsidy programs, meaning they're not supported by tax dollars. They're paid for by the program fees. So those are programs helping us.
You spurred a question in my mind. You know, one of the loan amounts, it goes up to $750,000. Given that amount, do you have a cap or a threshold on the size of the business that the South Carolina Business Loan Program can fund, either based on income or number of employees, or revenue and employees?
Hannah, that's a great question. Generally speaking, the size is what SBA defines as a small business. So, you know, if you got less than a couple hundred employees, most folks fall in that window. The SBA defines one of the measures is average net income of less than $5 million and a net worth of less than $15 million, which is most of the small businesses as we would see them out there. And if I'm the primary lender, you know, the loan cap on one program would be that $750,000. But if I'm working in combination with a bank, there's essentially not that cap. So we can do larger projects. So it's our mission, either myself individually or me in working with one of your local banks, to find a way to provide funding.
John, I'll give you last word. Any other questions or thoughts?
Well, I probably want to underscore this again. This is not a time to be shy or proud, and don't wait till you're in a jam to ask either Hannah, myself, or Randy for help, because there might be something, as we're trying to get through these very tricky times, there might be something you're overlooking. And again, in combination with what Randy has covered today, do take a look at the CARES Act grant programs. You'd hate to walk by those dollars as well. And I'm grateful to be in both Hannah and Randy's company, and know that we have a lot of good partners on the call as well with the bank. So if we all pitch in together, we'll get through these times. Thank you.
Sounds great, everybody. Have a great day. And again, this recording will be on our Chamber's Facebook page if you want to go back and re-listen and have any clarifications. But of course, just reach out to Randy or one of us, and we'll be glad to pass along that information. Have a great day, everybody. And we'll see a lot of you tonight at Conversations and Cocktails.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. My email is always open.
Thanks, Randy.
Have a great day.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.